I heard you say, if you don't rise to the occasion,
Sink to your training.
sink to your training.
Yes.
Ah, I'm taking your course. I don't think I've heard that. I missed that. That's powerful.
Yeah, you'll never rise to the occasion, right? You sink to your
Right.
training. So your
Right.
training on point. And here's one of the things that I've done with officials. I started doing it with baseball pitchers. And I wanted baseball pitchers to have better body language, better focus, better tempo, better self-imagery, better practicing their release. I call it shadow bullpens. I picked this up when I worked with, as you called it earlier, Ed, the UCF. It's the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting
Oh,
Championship.
yeah.
We had 5 UFC world champions. And I remember working with a guy named George St. Pierre, who people may recognize the name as maybe the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. And I remember watching him train in Montreal. And he's sitting there and he's hitting the bag and he's kind of going through it. And I'm like, George, when you're hitting the bag or you're punching in front of a mirror doing shadow boxing, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm working on my technique. And I'm like, are you visualizing anything? He's like, what do you mean? I said, are you visualizing your opponent you're going to face in 3 weeks, Josh Koscheck, and his blonde kind of afro and him throwing punches at you and you slipping and going through the whole game in your mind? He's like, well, not really, but I know what he looks like. I know where his tattoos are. I know what his face looks like. Like, let me practice. And you should have seen the change in his shadow work. It went from like a level 5 out of 10 focus engagement to like a level 11 out of 10. He started sweating more. He started getting more into it. It was like eye-opening to me. Here's one of the best athletes in the world. At the time, he had just lost his UFC championship belt, and it was number 1 pound for pound in the world, and he could get better with his imagery. So I took that shadow boxing, I brought it to pitching, and now I work with it with officials. So I've got officials that will literally, go out in their garage and like tape out a very small basketball floor, 3-point key, the whole thing. And they will position themselves and practice blowing the whistle, making calls, going over to the table, big body language, like they're role playing, shadow officiating, practicing mechanics, practicing positioning, practicing voice command and volume and everything that they need to do. And they do this a lot in the off season as it leads up to the season, or you do it in the summer before you go to those camps that you guys have where they have to go perform when it's not in season. They still got to go perform, and that's how they get evaluated. If you're doing shadow bullpens or shadow officiating 3-4 times a week, when you go out on the floor, you just raise your basement of what you're going to sink to.
Yeah.
You can't just practice officiating in a game. You have to prepare to prepare. So when you get out there, it's just second nature.
Hey, Brian, listen, you hit something there. Well, about journaling. I mean, I've had conversations with our people and they say, hey, let me ask you a question. You're into the series. Oh, yeah. Are you journaling? Well, yeah, I wrote there's a whole different level of commitment to journaling. And that post game is the first time I ever heard that. Well, if I could have done this stuff when I was refereeing, I could have been pretty good. But you think about this, let's talk about how extensive journaling can be and how powerful it can be. My son Ed is a big journaling guy. He goes through book after book after book, and I know it's strong. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think journaling is part of the reflection process, right? And I think if you think about the 3-step, what I call a success cycle, I prepare, I perform, I reflect. I prepare, I perform, I reflect. And Rob, for an official at your level, preparing, performing, reflection, which one of those 3 gets the least amount of time for you?
Probably somewhere between performing and reflection.
Because you guys get, you prepare all the time.
Yeah, you prepare.
40-minute game, right? And then a lot of times the reflection piece is just like willy-nilly, maybe I do it, maybe I don't, but there's no specific process to it. And that's where the journal of just literally sitting down in the stripes after the game, it's fresh in your mind. And some people like to get some space from the game and shower and go do it when they're having a meal with their crew or whatever. So you got to find out what works for the individual. But the one reason why people don't journal is, 1, they don't even know it's an option. 2, they think they got to be like, who's the author of Harry Potter?
Oh.
You guys know? J.K. Rowling, maybe, right? Like they gotta be J.K. Rowling or Stephen King when they're journaling, and it has to be really extensive. And it's like, it can be extensive, but more importantly, it's got to be consistent. Think about consistency over duration with most anything. So when they're doing their evaluation post-game, just put down what I do well, what I do better, how am I going to do it? What I do well, what do I want to do better, how am I going to do it? Or another one would be, what do I need to start doing better? What do I got to stop doing? What must I continue? What did I do well? So either well, better, how, or start, stop, continue. And then they might even have specific questions around, mechanics of officiating, which I'm not so familiar with, but positioning, volume, voice control, and physical mechanics, et cetera, right? So, but if they have that journaling process and just write things down, it takes it out of your head on paper. And then when you go to do a shadow officiating, you can open up your journal and take a look and say, well, what do I need to work on? Let me look at my better. What do I got to do better? And then practice that before the next game. And I think what the journaling process does as well is it just allows you to hit that reflection. I think no matter on who the athlete is, or the official or the coach, it's prepare, perform, prepare, perform, prepare, perform, and they just bypass the reflection. But that's where the learning happens. The learning happens in the reflection process. So the more you reflect, that's where you take those nuggets. And a big mentality that I want your officials to get is that, it's win or learn. Like I know there's no outcome attached to your name as an official, but you're still competitive. You got into it because you're a competitor. You love sports. You want to be around it. And a lot of times I think as athletes or competitors or officials, we think it's win or lose. I did good or I did bad. And when you say learn, that's neutral. It's like taking a coin. If I take a coin, most people think a coin has two sides, head, tails. You ever taken a coin and put it on the rim, the third side, the edge? Of course we have. So there's three sides to a coin, just like there's positive, negative, and neutral. Practice neutral thinking, practice neutral behavior after the game, separate the who and the do, and look at it from a neutral standpoint and say, like, if I were evaluating one of you, I'm not going to be very emotional about it, right? Because that's not my performance. Or I'm just going to look at it like a neutral third party and say, what I do well, what do I got to do better, how am I going to do it?
Hey, Brian, in regards to journaling, what I found in just kind of doing a little homework, and I've started to do the well, better, how ever since Nate came on, and it's a great exercise. And I just think it's important to talk about the timing of that reflection, because what I've found personally is if I do it immediately following the game versus with the next day or 2 days later, I lose effectiveness. And I think that's probably a valid point that a lot of our members should hear, is not only to do that exercise, but the timing and when we do that exercise as far as the effectiveness.
When do you do it, Rob? You said you do it right after, or you do it the next day?
No, I try to do it right after.
Yeah.
Like when I get back to the hotel room, I have my form, and I try to go through, and even if I don't go through the process of my deep dive reflection right now, I'm going to make some bullet points of, okay, here's what happened in this game I liked, what I didn't like, what I can do better. And then I at least get that down on paper. So now when I go back the next day or so, I don't have to go through that process again. I've already have my outline, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's pretty individualistic too, right? Some people like to do it in the locker room, still in the stripes. Some want to do it when they get that first kind of alone time, maybe back in the hotel or on the plane after the game. And I've had some officials that have said to me, I like to, after the game, get away from it, then go watch the video because I'm less emotional, I'm more neutral. And after I watch the video, I have a better understanding of actually how I did. Then I do my well, better, how. So I think I don't think the timing of when you do it is as important as being consistent with the timing of when you do it. So for each official, find out when it's most convenient and consistent for you and do it that way. And the thing I would suggest starting with is maybe right there, start in your stripes in the locker room, because that's probably most fresh in your mind, but then play with it and find out what's going to be best for you.
And I do have, Brian, before we get to the end of the call, I did have one question for you specifically. And this is from personal experience, but I'm sure a lot of our members are struggling with this as well. And that is, we talked so much about the pregame preparation, and now you've kind of put a bow on that with the postgame, how we're going to go through our postgame process. But one of the things that I struggle with personally, and again, I hope this resonates with a lot of our members, is we put so much effort into the preparation for the game. Okay, we have 90 minutes in the locker room, and now we go out and we work. Just as a college example, we work 20 minutes. So we go through that whole process for those 20 minutes, and we're so focused, we're locked in, and now the first half ends. Okay, and now we come into locker room, and I think naturally what we do is we kind of take a deep breath, let the first half go, and we have there's an emotional, physical part of us that's kind of just sits back and has a tendency to just kind of take a deep breath again. So now we only have 15 minutes to get ready for the second half. Okay. Of that, I think, we go out on the floor at 4, 5, 6 minutes. First team will come out and we'll go back out on the floor. So now I find that sometimes I don't have the same focus coming back out in the second half. And I think a lot of our members can relate to that. And now, we're at 16:40 of the second half, and your self-talk is just telling you, get back in the game, get focused, get locked in. So my question to you is there a way in that shortened 15 minutes to kind of do some things, or do you have ideas on how we can get back locked in coming out of timeout or coming out of halftime to get that same focus for the second half?
Yeah, I think it's, again, taking the odds concept of an hourglass, right? So I have an hourglass where I funnel into the game, I ref the game, I come out. We want to take that same process into, like, that's big. That's very, very macro, very big. Game, pregame, postgame. That same hourglass in routine hits for halftime. I come into the first half, come out of it. Get ready for the second half, ref the second half, come out of it. Just like I come into the play, I ref the play, there's a whistle, there's a break, I come into the next play. And that pregame, that in-game routine is almost like clocks, players, partners, clocks, breath, play.
Yeah.
And that happens that fast as you come in this way. Clocks, players, partners, clocks, play, boom, we're in action. Play happens, I come out, I take a deep breath, and now I kind of get out, I come back in, clocks, player, partners, breath, boom, we play. So from a halftime standpoint, to address your question, Rob, one, is for the officials, if they're looking for a tangible place to start listening to this, if you don't have a script, boom, 15-minute halftime. From 15 to 13, I'm doing this. 13 to 11, I'm doing this. 11 to 9, I'm doing this. 9 to 8, I'm doing this. 8 to 6, I'm doing this. If you don't have that written down, you don't have a process for your halftime routine. Your process for your halftime routine is up here in the clouds, not in the dirt. So how do I move it from the clouds to the dirt? I write it down. Then I can share it with other experienced officials, or I can share it with our court club listeners and say, what do you think about this? And then you have a process that you can go through. And when you have that process you can go through, you're able to, after the first half, flip the switch off, because I know I'm going to flip it back on when the 7-minute mark comes and I go out to the floor. So there's that one of writing down your process. Two is when you go out to the floor, having a routine that you go through, such as when I cross the end line, or I come out of the tunnel, or I cross the half court line, whatever it is, and I'm out there, that's me flipping the switch. And if people don't have that routine of how to get going for the second half, it's going to be based off of kind of how I feel, or what's the game like, or where am I at that day. And I have the downgrade because the first half was, Final Four game. The first half was really exciting. It's a 15-point game at halftime. I come back out. I got to be able to professionally be consistent with where I need to be and be that neutral person when I come out. Had an official the other day say, he was doing a game, thought it was going to be a big game, close game, and it was 30 points at halftime. And he exactly struggled with that coming out in the second half. And I said, that's on you, man. You're letting the outside factor influence you. You got to go inside out, not outside in. Outside in is, it's a big game. They're all big games because you're working it. The biggest game of your career is the next one. The biggest half of your career is the next one. Why? Because it's the next one, man. Right. And that's how you got to approach it. And you got to approach it that way to stay neutral. You got to approach it that way to stay consistent. You can't be up and down based off of what's this game going to be. It's a Final Four game. It's a big game. Look, if you're treating a Final Four different than a preseason game, you ain't a professional, man. Be a professional and treat the preseason game like the NBA Finals, so you can treat the NBA Finals like a preseason game. It's what you do. It's how you call the game. You're signing your name on it. And if you're going to sign your name on it, it better be your best work. I don't care if it's high school JV or Final Four.
Hey, Brian, you're blowing me away here. You're acting, you come off, the stuff is so relevant and right on. It's like you've been working in the officiating business for 20 years. I mean, there's so many things here that wow, very impressive. And I want to remind people that go on to briancain.com and look at the mental mastery coaching program, and maybe you get more of this. I can tell you that I signed up and it's been well worth the investment. we're going to do a wrap. I want to ask one thing. We touched on process versus outcome. I get that. Let me just talk specifically. Our members after the first of the year will say, hey, I'm going to go to the Big 12 camp. I'm going to the Big 10 camp. I'm going to try to get into the RMAC. I'm going to, I'm working high school. I'm going to go to D3. But going to go to these camps, and then I'm going, I'm going to get my shot. I'm going to get my shot. I'm going to go in. So, and then what happens? They go, and usually the first time they go, about 90% of the time they'll say, well, you did a nice job. Come back next year, and we'll keep watching you. So they didn't get the outcome. It's like, oh, bummer. I thought I was going to get hired. Didn't get hired. Sometimes they have to go like 2-3 times, multiple times before they get hired. And there are some cases where they don't get hired. So, the process sometimes with our people is overlooked because I got to get ready for that camp. Matter of fact, we started camps in the spring, Court Club did, which all we do is process. We don't do hiring. We're just trying to get people ready, and we do process. But people, I'll talk to them and say, are you going to a teaching camp? Oh, no, I got to go get hired. I'm going to go to this camp. So kind of in summation, this is a real thing that happens to, I don't know, Rob, 80, 90% of our members, right? That
Absolutely. Yeah.
try to get to the NBA. So.
Yeah, and that's, it's no different for coaches and athletes. Everybody starts looking at the fruit of the tree. I want the fruit of the tree. I want the outcome. I want to be a Big 12 referee. But they don't water the root of the tree, which is go get better. Oh, I'll tell you, the reason why you're not getting hired is you're not good enough. Okay. I'd imagine there's a shortage of officials in the country, man. There's just a shortage of qualified officials to get jobs and get the bookings that we need. So if you're not getting hired, go get better. And you don't get better by, it's like travel ball with youth sports. We get better by playing games all the time. No, you get better by training. You get better by practicing. You get better by working on yourself. Then you go perform. Like a lot of these guys is just perform, and they never reflect and they never prepare. Prepare, perform, reflect. If it's just prepare all the time, you're going to be about the same official a year from now as you are today. You got to spend time preparing, whether it's physically by going to a court club, whether it's mentally by going to briancain.com, getting in the certification, or two of my free course for coaches, my free course for athletes, or checking out some of the articles and resources we have there. But you got to do that preparation work. And I'd bet for most of your officials when they go into those camps, it's not because they're not in shape. It's not because they don't know the calls or the mechanics. It's not because they don't know the positioning. Like some of those things, you got to learn. Those are the basics. I'm sure those are getting taught. They know it. The problem is they're not doing it. And they're not doing it because there's a mental block. They go out there and now they get internal and they start thinking about how they look, and they get internal and they start thinking about where they're at instead of just out there officiating. And when you're officiating your best, you're not thinking about confidence. You're not thinking about body language. You're not thinking about positioning. You're thinking about watching what's happening on the floor. But when you go to these camps, it's just like the minor league baseball player who makes it to the big leagues. He forgets what got him there. And he goes up there and tries to do something else, tries to do something big, right? They try to step up. And my message to your officials is, look, the step up happens every day, man. The step up happens every day with your preparation. The step up happens every day with your training. And then the performance is the result of that training. So step up in your training every day and literally treat every moment that you're out there training, and every moment you're doing your shadow officiating, and every game you get to do that you think, I should be assigned better games than that. Well, that's not your decision, man. You're not the assigner. So take the game that you're given and go execute it flawlessly. Be above 92% in your accuracy and calling, and guess what? Maybe you'll get better games, and maybe you won't. But the game that you have is the biggest game of your career in your life. Why? Because it's the next one. So go execute that flawlessly. And then if you take that mentality of every game is a big one, when you go to those camps, you're going to be able to execute and operate at a much more efficient level, a much more effective level, and perform better because you're not trying to step up in a camp. You're trying to go out there and do what you do.
I love it. I love the process thing where you talked about win the day. You got to win the day, and that's what that adds up. Yes, Rob.
Ed, if I could put an explanation point on this, something just came to my mind as we're talking about the camp setting. If you're out there listening to this call and you've ever heard in a camp environment, hey, we're looking for the it factor, but oh, by the way, we can't define what it is. We just know it when we see it. Well, I think what Brian has just given us today is the it.
Amen. That's great. That's a great win.
And I tell you what, it's practiced, man. It's trained. It's not that you have it or you don't. It's that you're trained or you're not. It's not that you have it or you don't. You're trained or you're not. And I went from being a guy, kid you not, 5 years ago, not even 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2016, I signed up for my first Ironman. I go for a run. I got 100 days to do an Ironman triathlon, 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, 26.2 mile run. I can't run 3 miles without stopping. Now, granted, it's 100 degrees in Dallas, Texas, but I'm going, dude, I can't run 3 miles, and I got 90 days to get ready to do an Ironman. I'm in trouble. But what did I do? I eliminated the things from my life that weren't going to help me. I focused in on the things that would. I didn't have a drop of alcohol for 4 months. I trained every day. I went out there and got myself, I went from 220 to 185, got myself in the most elite shape I had been in, finished the Ironman, got done and said, damn, that was easier than I thought it would be.
Mm.
I signed up for a 100-mile race. That was not easy, but running 100 miles in one day simply proved to me that you can have, and do anything you want with the right training and enough time. So the time that you have to officiate this game, we know is limited, but the training opportunities that you have are plentiful, and you have to maximize those training opportunities, conditioning wise, mechanic wise, most importantly, the 6 inches between your ears, mental game wise, because that 6 inches is what controls the 6 feet below. And if you're not doing mental training, you will get passed by those officials who do, because those officials who do will outperform you.
Well, hey, Brian Cain, you knocked it out of the park. We really tremendous stuff. We appreciate it tremendously you being here. And thanks. I want to thank Nate Harris for connecting me with you. And I'm excited about personally, because I'm marching through the mental mastery course, and just people want to contact you. I know it's go on your site and reach out. Is that?
Yeah. Go hit me up at briancain.com. I know officials, you guys kind of live in the dark world of not being on social media and things like that, which is cool, and I respect that, because if you look at my social media, I follow 0 people. So if you just want to hit me up with an email, my email for your listeners, Brian1, the number 1 at briancain.com. So Brian1 at briancain.com. They can also hit me through my website, but I do a lot of work, with one-on-one coaching with officials, and I absolutely love it. I love the officiating game. One of my high school baseball teammates is a Major League Baseball umpire who's worked the All-Star game. We stay in contact a lot, and working with Nate has been awesome.
Yeah.
Because I have so much respect for what you guys do. When I was a high school athletic director, we were 2 hours away from our closest team that we would play, and we would get these snowstorms, and officials couldn't get to us. So if the game was going to go on, I had to jump in and officiate some games. And I will tell you what, man, you guys make it look easy. I remember doing freshman girls basketball, and I have no idea what I'm doing. This is so much more than I thought, So instant respect for what you guys are doing. Love the mindset that you have to stay neutral and to deal with the adversity, but also the preparation process and the competitiveness that officials bring to be great, to get to that level, to do the games that they want to do. So if I can assist any of your officials, please email me, hit me through the website. I'd love to be in your corner.
Brian.